Hi everybody, I'm not here today, but I wanted to let you know that I'm going to walk you through the reading so that we don't miss a day of class. So I'm going to do some guided reading of the Odyssey up through page 569 from where we left off. We're going to start with the Lotus Eaters, and then I'm going to make a separate video to walk you through doing the graphic organizers for Lotus Eaters. And by the next time we have class, you should have the reading done. After having watched the video, you should have the graphic organizers done, whether you do it in class or for homework, and you should have question of the day done, which will be passed out by the substitute on a piece of paper. Okay, let's do it. Why don't you guys get out your copies of the Odyssey, get out your maps, and maybe get out your cheat sheet. That might help you. Here we go. We left off with the Lotus Eaters. And I want you to remember that 6 benches, remember after the battle on Ismaris, 6 benches were empty on each ship after the last battle. So that's important to remember that Odysseus's crew just kind of keeps dying. All right, here we go. The Lotus Eaters. Now Zeus, the Lord of Cloud, roused in the north a storm against the ships, and driving veils of squall moved down like night on land and sea. So here's another storm that we have to weather. The bows went plunging at the gust, sails cracked and lashed out strips in the big wind. We saw death in that fury, dropped the yards, unshipped the oars, and pulled for the nearest lee, an area sheltered from the wind, so they're trying to stay safe. Then 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief, until a third dawn came with ringlets shining. Then we put up our masts, hauled sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it safely home that time, but as I came round Malaya, the current took me out to sea, and from the north a fresh gale drove me on past Cythera. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea before dangerous high winds. Upon the 10th, we came to the coastline of the Lotus Eaters, who live upon that flower. We landed there to take on water. I'll pick that up on the next slide, but let's look at the map real quick to see where this Malaya and Cythera are. So he was up here in Sacones, and he talks about getting blown down here past Cape Malaya and Cythera to the land of the Lotus Eaters. Do we see that? Whoa, it took 10 days to get him all the way over here. So this is where he is, very far away from his goal of Ithaca. All right, so all the ship's companies mustered alongside for the midday meal. Then I sent out 2 picked men and a runner to learn what race of men that land sustained. They fell in soon enough with Lotus Eaters, who showed no will to do us harm, only offering the sweet lotus to our friends. But those who ate this honeyed plant, the lotus, never cared to report nor to return. They longed to stay forever, browsing on that native bloom, forgetful of their homeland. I drove them, all 3 wailing to the ships, tied them down under their rowing benches, and called the rest, "All hands aboard! Come, clear the beach, and no one taste the lotus, or you lose your hope of home." Filing into their places by the rowlocks, my oarsmen dipped their long oars in the surf, and we moved out again on our seafaring. So let's look at this part right here that I have underlined. Remember, it is a Greek value to resist temptation, right? And we have these Lotus Eaters who aren't trying to do any harm to Odysseus or his men, but they're offering a plant. And when people eat that plant, they never care to report nor to return. They become very distracted. They just kind of become forgetful. So I'm asking you, what does this remind you of? What in real life, what real life challenge or obstacle does this remind you of? People who claim to have no ill will towards you. They don't want to do harm, but they want to offer you something that's going to make you forgetful or distracted. So jot down a little note there what you're thinking about. I also want you to notice that Odysseus definitely takes charge of his men and demonstrates his leadership when he starts gathering everyone up and telling them, no, 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 don't do this. Get back on the boat. We got to go. We have a mission to do. So don't get distracted by that lotus. You will lose hope of your home. Okay? And then they're off again. So it was just a quick stop at the lotus eaters, and they're back on the boats, back out at sea. All right? Moving on. Whoa. Whoops. Sorry, friends. Okay, so now we are starting the episode of the Cyclops. The Cyclops. We've probably all heard of a Cyclops. If you look at the note over on the side over here, it is, well, the Cyclopes is just the plural. When you have more than one Cyclops, you have two Cyclopes. It's a race of giants with one eye in the middle of their forehead. So let's see what Odysseus does when he meets the Cyclops. This is a very long episode. We are not going to finish it all in one day. It might take us probably 2, maybe 3 classes to finish it. Here we go. In the next land we found were Cyclopes, giants, louts, without a law to bless them. In ignorance, leaving the fruitage of the earth in mystery to the immortal gods, they neither plow nor sow by hand, nor till the ground, though grain, wild wheat and barley, grows untended, and wine grapes in clusters ripen in heaven's rains. Cyclopes have no muster and no meeting, no consultation or old tribal ways, but each one dwells in his own mountain cave, dealing out rough justice to wife and child, indifferent to what the others do. As we rode on and nearer to the mainland at one end of the bay, we saw a cavern yawning above the water, screened with laurel, and many rams and goats about the place inside a sheepfold, made from slabs of stone, earth-fast between tall trunks of pine and rugged towering oaks. A prodigious man slept in this cave alone, and took his flocks to graze afield, remote from all companions, knowing none but savage ways. A brute so huge, time out, I'll finish that next sentence when we go to the next page. I want you to notice these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I took 5 characteristics of the Cyclops and put them over here. If you see number 1, it says without a law to bless them. They're lawless. There's no laws. There's no rule in the land of the Cyclopes. Number 2, each one dwells in his own mountain cave. They're very solitary creatures. They deal out rough justice to wife and child. Number 3, they're violent. So we have these big, solitary, lawless creatures who are very violent. And number 4, don't really care about others. They're indifferent to what the others do. And then number 5, if he's making a sheep pen out of slabs of stone and tall trunks of pine, he's moving like gigantic rocks and gigantic trees, meaning very strong, extremely strong. Okay? So we left off right here. It was a brute so huge, he seemed no man at all of those who eat good wheaten bread, but he seemed rather a shaggy mountain reared in solitude. We beached there, and I told the crew to stand by and keep watch over the ship. As for myself, I took my 12 best fighters and went ahead. I had a goat skin full of that sweet liquor that Euthance's son Marin had given me. He kept Apollo's holy grove at Ismarus. For kindness we showed him there, and showed his wife and child, he gave me 7 shining golden talents, perfectly formed, a solid silver wine bowl, and then this liquor. 12 two-handled jars of brandy, pure and fiery. Not a slave in Marin's household knew this drink. Only he, his wife, and the storeroom mistress knew, and they would put 1 cupful, ruby-colored, honey-smooth, in 20 more of water, but still the sweet scent hovered like a fume over the wine bowl. No man turned away when cups of this came round. All right, so he's got this liquor, this brandy that's pure and fiery. It's so strong that 1 cupful of it gets diluted into 20 other cups of water. So we have this really strong liquor that's going to end up being his kind of secret weapon. Stay tuned. But he got that as a gift, and he brought it to the cave for the Cyclops. Another example of Greek hospitality. All right. A wineskin full I brought along, and victuals in a bag. For in my bones I knew some towering brute would be upon us soon, all outward power, a wild man, ignorant of civility. We climbed then briskly to the cave, but Cyclops had gone afield to pasture his fat sheep. All right, so now the cave is empty and just Odysseus and his men are there. So we looked round at everything inside, a drying rack that sagged with cheeses, pens crowded with lambs and kids, each in its class, firstlings apart from middlings, and then the dewdrops, or newborn lambkins, penned apart from both. And vessels full of whey were brimming there, bowls of earthenware and pails for milking. My men came pressing round me, pleading, "Why not take these cheeses, get them stowed, come back, throw open all the pens, and make a run for it? We'll drive the lambs and kids aboard. We say, put out again on good salt water." Ah, how sound that was! Yet I refused. I wished to see the caveman, what he had to offer. So look, his men, all they want to do is just take the stuff, get out of there, and be on their way. But Odysseus refuses. Maybe an example of YOLO, right? He wants to see the caveman. We're not sure, but he says, no, we're going to stay. Let's see what's going on here. No pretty sight it turned out for my friends, right? So Odysseus wants to stay, and he's telling Alcinous, because remember, this whole story is him talking to Alcinous. He's saying, yeah, I wanted to stay, but it was no pretty sight turned out for my friends. So I'm asking, I wonder if that is an example of foreshadowing. We'll have to answer that question when we get to the end, but it's something I'm thinking right now. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, an example of sacrifices, and took some cheese to eat, then sat in silence around the embers waiting. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. He dumped it with a great crash into that hollow cave, and we all scattered fast to the far wall. Then, over the broad cavern floor, he ushered the ewes he meant to milk. He left his rams and he-goats in the yard outside and swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. Holy moly, how could you ever pick up a huge slab of rock as your door? So that's just another example of his strength. Okay. I also want you to notice this word scattered. The book is saying, mark the verb Odysseus uses to tell how he and his men moved away from Cyclops. Well, they scattered. All right. Well, usually you scatter when something's kind of scaring you. So just know that the author, Homer, is using these words very carefully. They scattered. They didn't back up. They didn't run away. They scattered like little mice when they see a cat. Here we go. 24 four-wheeled wagons with heavy wagon teams could not have stirred that tonnage of the rock from where he wedged it over the doorsill. Next he took his seat and milked his bleeding ewes. A practice job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling, thickened his milk, then into curds and whey, sieved out the curds to drip into withy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls, cooling until he drank it for his supper. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood. In the glare, he saw us. Uh-oh, now he sees all the guys. Nothing too important for you to have to remember from this section, other than that the Cyclops kind of has his own little system for how he gets things done. He definitely has a way that he gets his sheep milked and his food made and things like that. Strangers, he said, who are you and where from? What brings you here by seaways, a fair traffic? Or are you wandering rogues who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folk by sea? We felt a pressure on our hearts in dread of that deep rumble in that mighty man. But all the same I spoke in reply. We are from Troy, Achaeans, blown off course by shifting gales on the great South Sea, homeward bound, but taking routes and ways uncommon, so the will of Zeus would have it. We served under Agamemnon, son of Atreus. The whole world knows what city he laid waste, what armies he destroyed. It was our luck to come here. Here we stand, beholden for your help, or any gifts you give, as custom is to honor strangers. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the gods' courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest. All right, so the Cyclops finally sees them. Odysseus and his men are very scared, but Odysseus steps up and he